Welcome to the World Happiness Fest. It's the third edition. 3 years ago, it started in Miami. Then it went to Mexico. And this year, 2020, many of us will meet in Madrid. But not just that, we also going to meet here in the virtual room. And I am so excited today in our Path of Happiness at Work to be able to interview Marc Lesser. Hi, Marc.
Hi, Eve.
It's so good to have you here. Thank you so much.
I'm happy to be here.
It's very exciting. We can share all this wisdom about happiness at work with more than 40,000 people around the globe. And it's quite interesting because we both know us since about 2006 from California, where I also used to live. And now I'm here in Germany and you are still in Mill Valley, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we can talk more about this, but that was an interesting, I had just started doing some work at Google when I think right about the time we met is when I began my search inside yourself part of my life, which turned out to be quite influenced me a lot that time.
Oh yeah, and we want to hear more about it. And it's really beautiful that you bring it up, because what really drew me in when we met was a book you brought out, which was called Less.
Mm-hmm.
And in a world of always more, and you live in a very close distance to Silicon Valley, where it's all about new technologies and driving for more and getting up to Mars. And of course, also driven by a lot of monetary subjects. It is very brave in the early 2000s speak about less.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to share the audience a little bit about you. For me, you're one of the most fascinating people I ever met. And just a short intro to Marc. So Marc studied business and had an MBA from the University of New York and also a BA in psychology. And he is a very famous and well-known author for many books, such as Less, and also his new book, The 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader. But Marc is also a consultant in the business field, transforming corporations, and an entrepreneur. But what is most fascinating, that he was a director for Tassajara, a Zen center, and one of the first Zen centers in the West. And also, as you mentioned, you were a CEO for 2 companies. One is Search Inside Yourself, the company who made mindfulness very, very famous and brought it to many companies such as Google, and also a publishing company. And then you are a Zen teacher, and just experience you over all these years is really, you're very centered in yourself, and that in the chaos of our crazy VUCA world. And so I am really curious about, first of all, how you do this. And what do you think personally also, but also by your experiences, what makes really happiness and what makes happiness at work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that the first 2 practices in my most recent book that you alluded to, 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader, are love the work and do the work. And I think those are simple and yet profound. So it's it's to love the chaos. It's to love the change, love the unknown, you know, and it's okay. It's okay to, you know, to resist, you know, to love the resistance, you know, love your resistance. And I joke about, you know, that I've create a support group called Buddhists Against Change, you know, because who likes change? You know, I have, it's so, but it's noticing, loving, really loving being alive, and all that comes with it as a practice, you know. Uh, yeah, I'm it's funny. I've been rereading one of my favorite business books is a book from 30 years ago that I think is just as good and just as relevant today. Peter Senge, the
Mm.
fifth discipline. It's so good. And I was just reading today his rereading, probably, I don't know, for the fifth time, his chapter on personal mastery, and a beautiful uh, a beautiful discussion on the power of developing awareness, the power of developing awareness, and, you know, quoting, "The truth shall set you free." And yeah, I remember once, I think uh, I did some work years ago, um, some consulting work at the CIA, some mindfulness work, and walking in there, and the big on the wall of the CIA is "The truth shall set you free." And again, there's many ways to interpret that, but I think that um, you know, I think it's true that you know, loving the work of developing one's awareness, and searching for truth, searching for freedom, and then doing the work, right? Actually having a practice, um, and, you know, a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, a practice of helping others, of
Mm.
compassion, of yeah. So I think that's I feel really I feel really lucky, you know, and even, you know, I was the CEO, founder of the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, and I left that role. I resigned from that role for various reasons, and it was hard. And you know, I was, I've been, you know, there was quite a bit of grief and sadness with
Mm.
leaving that particular role and identity, and I'm thrilled and happy with developing, you know, seeing what's emerging in my life, and how much I learned and grew from that, as I've learned and grown from the books that I've written and the teaching that I get to do. So anyhow, that's I'm now not even quite sure what you asked me, but I hope I've at least somewhat answered the question.
Yeah, it sounds so easy to say love what is and do what needs to be done, right? And so it all relates a lot, and that's at least what I hear when you share this. Happiness at work or in general starts with us, right? It starts with myself, and that is why self-mastery is so important nowadays, because we need first to get aware about these things and embrace what is, and see the bigger context, and only then we can really interact with others in a really positive way in business and create together. As many times, and that was my question, how is your guess on happiness at work? People are very much in the outside, right? You need kicker tables or a beautiful lunch or time at home, which might help, but you have to create first that happiness within. Is that what it comes down and summarizes to
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
speak
I
about the love, the work, and do the
yeah,
work.
yeah, I think it's, the it's very subtle and easy to, right. I think what you're saying in part to blame others or blame our circumstances, or why why was I born at this time, why is the world so messed up? Well, the world has always been pretty problematic and beautiful. So yeah, that kind of pointing the arrow at yourself, which again, it sounds easy, but I think it means, again and again looking at what our assumptions and deep models are, our own mental models. How
Mm.
are we seeing through the lens of unworthiness? Are we seeing through the lens of scarcity? And yeah, are we seeing right through the lens of what's lacking and what's not, what's not my fault?
Mm.
Or can we somehow, yeah, deeply stay with trying to understand our own, what we bring to things, and our own, again, our own models, our own blind spots, and again and again we'll see, that uh, it's like the life of a mindfulness teacher or a Zen teacher is, one mistake following another. So it's even learning to love the mistakes and be humbled and confident by the mistakes. Also, while you were talking, it made me think of, I I learned so much, about work and happiness by spending years in a Zen monastery kitchen. Uh,
Yeah, please tell
Somehow,
us more
it, it,
about that.
it's funny. It was never like my choice. It's funny how the interrelatedness of things. But um, I was 20. What, I was 24 years old when I showed up. My first summer at Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, and I was assigned as the dishwasher. So I found myself in the kitchen washing dishes, and I just thought it was a blast. It was just so much fun, and such a great job, washing dishes. And then I was assigned to chop vegetables in the kitchen during the winter, and then the next summer I was asked to be the bread baker. And a couple of years later, I was asked to be the assistant to the head cook for a year, and then I was the head cook for a year. But it was an environment where there was very little separation between work and practice. That
Mm.
it was really seen as work was seen as service, was seen as an offering, was seen as an extension of meditation
Yeah.
practice, in right in the cauldron of, working with a lot of people with very high pressure, getting stuff done, things, what do you do when it's time to serve dinner and the potatoes are not cooked, and how do you handle that? And it was like, well, you come up with a solution, we're gonna quick get out the cabbage, uh, something that we can cook in 3 minutes,
A lot
so
of analogies to the corporate world, right?
yeah,
Thinking about,
it's the same thing. It doesn't matter. That was really the big aha for me, even teaching at Google,
yeah.
which was what was it that I really learned and felt that I got into my own body in the Zen kitchen, and how could I bring that into working here with Google engineers and seeing that it's all people wanting to find connection, meaning, happiness, and yeah, all the same. There are some differences, of course, but many more similarities.
Mm. So you also worked and consulted many leaders. I have two questions, really curious around that. Did you ever met one where you say, wow, he really has it down? And of course, why? Why can he spread this happiness and inspiration within the company? And the second question is, what kind of advice could you give leaders to tap into that potential of spreading happiness and use that to
Yeah,
grow?
yeah. It's interesting. The first, I think I can actually name names here. uh, I spent many years working uh, at the San Francisco airport, and I still do some work there. Uh, but I started working with a man who was the director of the airport, a man named John Martin, who's
Mm.
now a Dharma teacher.
Yes.
He teaches at Spirit Rock and has a small group in San Francisco. And John John was a phenomenal leader, and I think in part because he just had tremendously questioning mind, my wanting to uh, be a compassionate leader. His uh, yeah, I think just he brought such intelligence and had spent a lifetime working at the airport and just knew the how power worked. He had a good sense of political awareness. The
Mm.
airport is a very complicated. It's a city organization, and one where the stakes are very high. Right, you have to
Mm.
have your systems together, safety together, to be able to respond when things go wrong. You know, a million or so customers go through there each year, and he was someone that it's one of the things I love about working with leaders is how much I learn. Right, I'm even if I'm in a coaching capacity or a training capacity. And I think that's going back to your original question. Um, I think that we humans really love learning, and that if we have a learning mindset, no matter what we're doing, whether we're coaching or being coached, or whether we're um, being with people who are ill and dying. um, they're tremendous teachers. People who
Mm.
are stuck in their particular roles, or people who are experiencing birth and death. And
Yeah.
so seeing um, seeing possibilities to learn everywhere, I think,
Mm.
is one of the great joys of my life. I feel really lucky that I'm
Mm.
able to do that.
Good reminder, because I'm thinking, right, we all learned to walk that way. We walked, we fall down, we got up again, and that we did many times. Otherwise, we would still not walk. And through our path of socialization, we became that we are the knowers instead of the learners, and have that mindset of a child again, this
But funny
curiosity, and not even labeling mistakes or faults or
funny that you should use that analogy, because I started earlier when we were talking to mention about a little bit about my life, but my personal life has recently been transformed in that just very recently, my daughter and her husband, 8-month-old baby, and 2 dogs moved in with me
Oh,
and my wife. And um, and life is different now. There's a bit more chaos, and yet just every morning right now I get to watch this baby learning to walk,
yeah,
learning, who's just figured out crawling, and again just seeing his joy, like the joy of standing, the joy of discovering his body and helping me. I'm discovering my body, and my standing is like just this past weekend I was standing in front of 40 nonprofit leaders. I'm teaching this program called mindful nonprofit leadership program, and it's a beautiful thing. Again, uh, being in front of people, a diverse group of leaders, and how much I learn from
yeah.
being in a teaching. It's why I teach. It's the best way to learn, I think.
So that everyone takes a lot home, you already gave us a couple of insights, such as love the work and do the work and grow your awareness, pay attention to what is. And of course, I like that don't blame in the outside, right? A big part of it, and become the learner. But maybe you can give us like one little top secret what Marc is doing every day, or you do with the leaders you work, what we can embrace also,
Mhm, mhm.
even
Well,
you are not practicing mindfulness and you are the total either beginner or don't even practice it at all.
yeah. Well, again, I think um, you know, even if when you're practicing love the work and do the work, notice when you don't love the work. Notice, pay attention to when you're annoyed, when you're um, feeling tight, when you're feeling stress. Don't push those things away. Don't do a spiritual bypass and say and just kind of try and convince yourself that everything's great. Sometimes everything isn't great. Life is hard, and experience the sadness of the chaos, the longing, the whole range of emotions. I think uh, it's funny. I saw my yeah, I saw my old friend Ed Brown the other day, who wrote the Tassara Cooking and Tassara Bread book, and Ed is a great example of he talks a lot about how mindfulness and meditation isn't necessarily about being calm. It's just as much about experiencing your full range of emotions,
Mm.
of and that was, again, even one of the things that I felt like, my experience in the Tassara kitchen was, often, I cooked things that I wanted to be better. I wasn't satisfied with it, or there was, some pretty stressful relationships with, sharing space with other people and feeling crowded, and or feelings of frustration and anger. So the whole letting in the whole range of emotions, which it's interesting. That's the third practice in my book. The first two practices are love the work and do the work. The third practice is don't be an expert.
Ah, yeah,
Uh,
it's
right.
coming back
So
to the learner, right?
yeah, the learner, but the uh, to practice not knowing. In Zen there's an expression, not knowing is most intimate.
Mm.
Not knowing is most intimate. So I think I think uh, when we this need to be impressive or need to be an expert can be sterilizing of things. And I think the opposite of sterile in a way is intimacy, is juiciness. And there's some real juiciness, and we connect with each other when we don't know. Like if I don't really know who you are, and I don't know what you're going to say or what you're thinking or feeling, it's like, wow, that's beautiful. That's where I feel so much more connected to you than if I start to make assumptions or tell
Mm.
stories. And so I'm just being something about just being curious. Who
Mm.
are you? Who, tell Eve, so who are you? Come on, why don't you tell me?
Now we really get juicy and we want to go more into it. I love it. But I want to be also mindful for your time. And time is always flying by really fast. So I think, yeah, it's the conversation really just started. And it's a conversation with us, right? With myself in many ways. And then create, yeah, a deeper sense of, you called it intimacy also, which creates happiness with all our
Yeah.
putting the unconscious bias and patterns, mind patterns we created aside, and just embracing what is, right, without always this judgment. And I
So
think this is profound for everyone to take it with us.
I do want to, like a practice that I've been writing a lot about and thinking a lot about is noticing the gaps between what is and what you're aspiring to.
Mm.
To
Love
notice the
it.
gaps um, and in a non-judgmental way, but just like and these could be, internal, like wanting to develop more courage, wanting to develop more presence, wanting to be a better listener, noticing the gaps. When,
Mm.
when am I not being courageous, and how can I become more courageous? These gaps can also be um, you know uh, building a company, putting a team together, developing products, writing a book. Oh, I want to write another book. Oh, gee, there's a gap there. What do I need to do to uh, develop this book idea and actually bring it to fruition? And these gaps are uncomfortable. So, and so staying with the discomfort of noticing what is and what we aspire to be, without beating ourselves up, without getting into the whole that we don't need to motivate ourselves by unworthiness or stress, that we
Mm.
can motivate ourselves by curiosity and love and loving the work. So
Yeah.
that's maybe a more, I hope, maybe even a more practical
It's
response to
another
what you're.
very, very good practice. And it really leads to the moments of happiness, right?
Mhm.
Instead of being in the moment where it's not enough. It
Yeah,
is enough. Yeah.
yeah. There's a beautiful passage I've been rereading. One of my core books is Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu
Mm.
Suzuki, in which he says, the real purpose, the real meaning of our lives is to move toward, toward greater freedom, toward greater enlightenment. And then he says, but the secret is to realize you're already there with every step that you take, that you
Mm.
don't need to wait for some future thing or some accomplishment, right? So I thought
Wow.
that was kind of really beautiful, beautiful way to understand our lives, and beautiful way. I think this is probably the secret to happiness, right? Is to have this aspiration to grow and develop, to find real freedom, and realize that we're already there with every step.
We are already there. Yeah.
Already there. Nothing's lacking.
I'm
And
definitely,
good.
I feel very happy we had this conversation. I want to go on and on. And definitely everyone who likes to learn more about Marc, we're going to share all the details. And you will find, of course, besides your book, on Inside Timer, with a course on the hero's journey, which is really exciting, and many, many other things. And if you, of course, also like to dive in, we have lots of other great speakers coming up in this beautiful World Happiness Fest around the globe. So much inspiration, just as we heard here with Marc. And I definitely, here in Germany, it's night now. I will sleep really well and wake up with a big smile. And I wish you a wonderful day, Marc, with how you call it, the family chaos. There's a lot of energy and beauty in that. And thank you so much for taking
Thank
the
you very
time
much.
and
It's
talking
been
with
a
us.
pleasure. Okay.
Okay, you take care, and we talk soon.